Hey everybody. We are in a bit of a conundrum. I wasn't planning on doing a VOD today, but something showed up on my feed, which is over here on my browser in the space of the Nobel Prize and stuff going on as far as whether Hinton and Hopfield should have won the Nobel Prize for physics. Now, I want to start by saying, I don't know. What do I know? So I'm not a physicist. I'm an AI computer scientist kind of guy. And I'm also not the knower of all things. So I probably don't have a clue. But some of my colleagues that I really trust who are experts in things like physics, quantum physics, all that good stuff, have let me know that they're not super thrilled with this. On top of that, I don't know about Hopfield, but Geoff Hinton already won the Turing Award with the three deep learning folks, Joshua Bengio, Jan LeCun, and Hinton. And us computer science people, like we don't have a Nobel Prize for computer science, but we have the Turing Award, and that's kind of like, to the best of my knowledge, it's sort of like our Nobel Prize. So here we are. And I want to take a minute to take a look at this and see what the heck is going on. I think that this may have been going on for a little while, but somehow something happened today, I guess. At least on my feed today. This is looking like a lot of 2024 stuff, but somebody, was it this LSTM guy is denouncing Hopfield? Yeah, maybe this is what happened today. Jürgen Schmidhuber, I'm probably not saying that right. 2025 update. So let's take a look at this. A Nobel Prize for plagiarism. Ooh. Technical report IDSIA 2424. Sadly, the 2024 Nobel Prize in Physics awarded to Hopfield and Hinton is effectively a prize for plagiarism. They republished foundational methodologies. Okay, maybe it's methodologies for artificial neural networks developed by Ivek Henko, Amari, and others in Ukraine and Japan during the 1960s and 70s, as well as other techniques without citing the original papers. Now, listen, I'm going to stop right there. It is. So I've done my fair share of publications, maybe several dozen peer-reviewed, anywhere in the space of entry-level kind of like workshop papers to peer-reviewed world-class papers at like NeurIPS. And been doing this for 20 years, maybe? Yeah, about 20 years. And I very honestly, I miss papers all the time. And I miss papers not because I'm a bad actor, but it's hard to be the knower of everything. And usually what happens in the peer review process, if there's a very well-known paper that you've missed that either is doing something similar or it sort of springboards your research, the reviewers inform you about this. They say, hey, you forgot this paper. It's super important. You really need to include this, and give them credit. This has happened to me many times. And then my team's response is almost always, thank you for the information. And then we revise the paper and then send in the final version. It's pretty straightforward. In fact, we'll even do errata afterwards and then put it on archive and say, hey, like I think we did that with 3 Pillars paper. It was published in ACM, and then I feel like Armando and I, maybe Tim Matson, we found some stuff that we didn't totally love, and then we put an updated version of the paper on archive to kind of fix the stuff. So this is a normal thing that I just want to be clear that this thing about without citing the original papers, this happens. I mean, I just want to be honest here. People make mistakes. If we foster goodwill and assume that they're good actors, we should give them a chance to be aware of the things and then make the corrections. Now, the question that I would have here is, were they made aware? So it says that these other papers came out, which, okay, I'm just going to take his word for it. But were Hopfield and Hinton made aware of this? By the way, Hopfield, I don't really care what anybody says about Hinton, but my view of Hopfield is, so that's my knowledge, he invented recurrent neural networks. Like, it's called the Hopfield network for a reason. I looked this up. Hopfield network. Content addressable memory. Yeah, here we go. See, it has this recurrent back edge. This is, I think, one of the first papers ever, maybe the first neural network to introduce recurrence. And recurrence is like, it's a massive step forward in the advancement of neural networks that led to a bunch of things like LSTMs, and I believe that is my personal opinion. So you may disagree with this, but I believe that LSTMs were the precursor for the transformer. And the reason for that is LSTMs are also recurrent networks, but they're slow on parallel computing devices, GPUs, or TPUs, tensor processing units, or various other configurations like with FPGAs or CGRAs. So if you don't have Hopfield networks, you don't really get to LSTMs. And then if you don't get to LSTMs, it's very strange to just immediately figure out how to do transformers, because transformers are sort of the step beyond LSTM, mostly to provide a way to capture the essence of what a recurrent edge is doing in neural network training and inference, because it's basically acting as a sequence model. And then transformers are essentially replicating that using the attention mechanism that then, it doesn't exactly do recurrence, as it's not, to the best of my knowledge, it's not a back edge, it's a forward edge, but it's a forward edge that goes across, which then allows it to propagate state to the next piece of data, which has the appearance, for all intents and purposes, as being sort of recurrent. Okay, so as someone that's studied neural networks for a while, this guy Hopfield I definitely feel like he should be winning something. That, yeah, he's known for the development of the Hopfield network. I mean, this is foundational stuff that has led to kind of the boom of AI. And so most of the people watching this channel probably know what transformers are. Many of you may not know what a Hopfield network is if you are coming into the AI space right now. But for those of you who have been in the game a little bit longer, I mean, like, if you disagree, I would love to hear why you disagree on why Hopfield's work shouldn't necessarily get global recognition in some way. Now, that being said, I'm not trying to say that I think Hopfield should get the Nobel Prize for physics. I actually think that's, just to be totally honest, I, these guys do machine learning. And that's computer science or mathematics or statistics. I don't know why. Like, I know some physicists that are really not happy about this. And the truth is, when I first saw it, I was kind of like, what was the committee thinking exactly? Like, I'm trying to foster goodwill, but I just don't understand. Like, how is this related to physics? And I feel like there's a bunch of people that are probably doing work in physics proper, that should probably be considered for an award in that domain. And then on top of this, when you consider that Hinton and LeCun and Bengio already won the Turing Award, and they split it 3 ways. We call them the deep learning godfathers or something. Do they need to win 2 of these? I mean, like, okay, maybe they deserve it. I haven't looked at the separation exactly on what Hinton is being recognized for here. That's disjoint with the Turing Award that they won back in 2020 or whatever that was. When did they win that? Let's take a look at that. When did Hinton win the Turing Award for deep? Okay, 2018. So in 2018, these 3 guys won this. And again, for those of you that don't know, the Turing Award is basically like that's sort of like our Nobel Prize. There's nothing. It's sort of like the Fields Medal in mathematics, I think. Anyway, it's sort of our award. So yeah, they're already recognized. Yeah, here, Godfathers of Deep Learning. Okay, cool. So, do they need to win more? Like, I don't know. But Hopfield's not in this list. Okay, so I would pause there and be like, okay, Hopfield should probably be in there. Okay, now let's continue. Even so, didn't cite the original papers. Even in their subsequent surveys and recent 2025 articles, they failed to acknowledge the original inventors. Okay, now again, I suspect that what he's saying is true, but I still don't know. One, I don't know what the original works look like. And that's super important because we need to see those works and understand how those are similar or different to understand this case, I think, more clearly. And then, in addition, did anybody make them aware? Do they know that these papers exist and they're potentially overlapping? And they came out earlier, so they should be accredited. Now, assuming that they do overlap and assuming that they were made aware, there's a lot of assumptions. And, I'm watching this show, 3 Body Problem, and I absolutely love it, which coincidentally is also about physicists. But in it, one of the guys is like, one of the main characters is talking to someone, and they're saying, well, I know this and this. And then he says, be careful what you know. This is usually the part that gets people in trouble. And I got to tell you, I've seen a lot of people get in trouble for thinking that they know things that they don't really know. They're making a lot of assumptions about things, and those assumptions are not fact, but they treat them as fact. This is why I'm so keen on this idea of separating out what's objective and subjective, and make sure you clarify, like, oh, this isn't a fact, this is just my opinion. So anyway, this they didn't acknowledge the original inventors. This apparently turned what may have been unintentional plagiarism into a deliberate act. Okay, so again, Jürgen, I need to know if they were made aware, and where's the evidence that shows that they were. Again, there's so much research in the world, and I miss things all the time. Like, for example, why do we even call it backpropagation? It's effectively the chain rule of calculus. It's a little bit more complicated, but that's sort of what's going on, the best I understand it, for regressive learning. So is somebody like giving, are the backprop people giving credit to whoever the calculus people were for inventing backpropagation? Because I'm pretty sure that came before backprop. So, like, we can do this dance all night long, and I'm not a big fan of just going after people, although admittedly, I think it is a little strange for computer scientists that are working on machine learning to be getting Nobel Prizes for physics, but I just assume I'm clueless. I mostly just assume that I don't know what's going on. So I did see this last year, and I did think, oh, that's interesting. And I was happy to see Hopfield recognized, and I was wondering why Hinton was winning like 2 of these, because usually they kind of limit it to 1 Nobel Prize. There's sort of a understood rule. Not always, but yeah, you got to be really leveled up, I think, to be hitting 2 Grand Slams. So anyway, Hopfield and Hinton did not invent any of the key algorithms that underpin modern artificial intelligence. Okay, we just looked at Hopfield network. Now, if these papers okay. Okay, so supposedly Google's telling us 1982. Yeah, here's the physical. I don't know. Look, machine learning, if done right, it can have practical value in pretty much any domain. So, yeah. So anyway, 1982, I guess, for Hopfield networks, and the 60s and 70s definitely predate that by 1 or 2 decades. Okay, so all that's sort of checking out. We're assuming all these things are right. All right. Moving forward, since the first version of this report was released in 2024, the plagiarism allegations have essentially remained unchallenged. The awardees have not tried to defend themselves. They can't. The facts are the facts. Okay, so again, Jürgen might be right, but boy, I would weaken some claims here to be really careful. Maybe he's right, and maybe he's just super angry, and I get it if that's the case. But even in cases where I think I'm totally right, and I'm gonna not have any problem defending my position, I still will often say, yeah, here, I think the 3 pillars of machine programming given that people say, they credit me with pioneering the field, me, Armando, and Tim, I think that it's intention, invention, adaptation. Truth is, I'm pretty darn sure that I'm right, but, sometimes brain's not always working, and as other people have reminded me, there's actually a fourth hidden pillar, which is data. And you didn't mention that, Goju. And they're not wrong. So anyway, the point is, like, kind of just ease off a little bit from the strong claims. All right. Thanks to many expert reviewers, including several famous neural net pioneers, for useful comments. By the way, I generally don't mention these things because it sort of doesn't matter. It doesn't generally come up. But I am on a lot of the, like, what I would consider the premier artificial intelligence conference research program committees. Yeah. Like NeurIPS and ICML and iClear and MLSys. And actually, I think what's interesting, there's one that I turned myself off of. But no, I think that was Bengio that's running that one. I don't think it was Hinton. And I just to be clear, I didn't turn it off because I'm in a fight with either of those superstars. I think well, I was just too busy. So anyway, having expert reviewers look at this to try to understand how this went down and what the actual data is probably a really important next step. And it sounds like Jürgen is the one that invented LSTMs. And so given that, I have a suspicion that he's probably more deeply aware of the origins of recurrent neural networks, given that long short-term memories are recurrent, are RNNs. And so if he believes someone invented RNNs that's not Hopfield, given that he invented LSTMs, I think that's what this is saying, could be a good chance that maybe he's right. Okay, so now let's take a look at this a little bit more on some of the comments here in Reddit. So this person is saying right here, he's been denouncing Hopfield, Hinton, LeCun, and others for a long time. Still, I read his blog post, and he has a point, though. I'll leave the plagiarism claim to a judge. Yeah, I'd probably do the same. Aside from whether it's really plagiarism or not, ML drama is the best kind of drama. Yeah, I'm telling you, like, this ML drama. Being a reviewer on NeurIPS is... yeah, I have a lot to say about that. I don't love it. It's too many papers. There's too many reviewers that are unqualified to be reviewing these tier 1 research papers. Like, and I don't mean that as a arrogant, like, gatekeeper, like, oh, you have to have all of these fancy degrees and stuff, but like, that's supposed to be the expert review, subject matter expert process, is that you sort of have to be an expert to be able to review other experts' work. And if you're not, I don't know how you can do that. And what I'm trying to say is, I know for a fact that in many cases, we had PhD students doing paper reviews for NeurIPS. And I know because I would sometimes get into discussions with them about, like, very basic ML things, and they wouldn't understand, like, the artificial intelligence 101 stuff, like a Hopfield network or the perceptron learning method that couldn't solve XOR, and that's why they sort of invented backpropagation, right? Like, these are really important historical changes that have led to where we are today. And I think it helps you put into context what different breakthroughs have really arisen and why. So on top of that, yeah, I'm really debating whether I tell this story or not. That's not good. It's not good for NERPs. I've actually threatened to, I don't think NERPs cares, but I threatened to stop reviewing for NERPs because they weren't doing enough desk rejects, and they were also letting papers where all the reviewers, I know of at least one case, actually probably more than that, where every reviewer for the paper rejected it. Every single one. So you have like 5 reviewers. Every single one of us rejected it. We all said, this is not an acceptable paper for NERPs. You're going to embarrass yourself. It's just technically wrong, and just reject. And that paper still got accepted. How? The area chair overruled us. Why is that possible? I don't know. I don't think the area chair should be able to overrule a unanimous reject from the reviewers that NERPs is bringing in to review papers. Like, if they're just going to overrule all of it, I could understand if it was like 2 for, 2 against. It's very murky. And so the area chair is like, listen, I like the paper, so I'm letting it in. Or I don't like the paper, I'm not letting it in. You guys were tied, and I'm the tiebreaker. Totally makes sense. But when you've got the entire group saying reject, everybody, there was no accept rating for that paper, and it gets accepted, that's not good science. That's not good science. And what makes it worse is it was very clear that that paper came from a very prestigious institute. And I think it was hand waved through because famous people wrote it. And so it's not good. I do not love, I mean, I don't think NERPs is the only place where this happens. There are actual articles written about this, about how the peer review process is getting really broken and people are doing some really shady things that they shouldn't. And that's very disheartening. But I have seen it at NERPs. I have not seen it at ICML, iClear, MLSys, all the other, the 15 other conferences that I do reviews for, or whatever. I haven't seen it in any of those cases. And again, like I can understand that NERPs is a bit overloaded, and so yeah, people are short on time, but that's just a strange one, right? So anyway, I'm not trying to bash on NERPs. It probably sounds like I am. I do think NERPs is, I have several NERPs pubs, very, very good conference, and it's helped advance. I mean, Transformers were published at NERPs, and our precision and recall for time series paper, which was like a NERP spotlight, which redefines the mathematics for anomaly detection for time series, was also at NERPs. So like some of my like potentially most important work has been published there. And I think the reviewers like got that right. And that paper is going on to change a lot of things. Transformers, I think they got that right. And Transformers are going to change things, but it's not perfect. And so, and that's okay, right? Science isn't, the peer review process is not going to be perfect. But there's some stuff that you see that is like, this just doesn't make sense. Like you could understand if you had 4 newbie reviewers and they all voted to accept it. And then you have an expert reviewer that's saying, hey guys, this doesn't make sense. This paper is actually not that good. And then they ignore me because they're like, well, the majority. And so like, I could understand that. But yeah, like having everybody vote no and then it still gets in, or the converse, which is everybody vote yes and it's still rejected. I've actually had that happen to me personally. That one I think can still happen. That was actually an ASPLOS paper. Yeah, we had something like 4 or 5 reviewers, and every reviewer was either a weak accept or a strong accept. There was no borderline. There was no reject. And so when my colleagues saw the reviews, they're like, welcome to ASPLOS. Good job. And then after the program committee, we were like, your paper has not been accepted. And we were all kind of like, huh, that's sort of strange. Like, what is, okay, what do we have to do? Like, slip you some money or something? But I think actually what happened is in the PC, by the way, we still got the paper published somewhere else. So like, whatever. I don't actually care that much. I just try to do good work, and then the stuff will eventually get published somewhere, I suspect. And sometimes the story is not exactly right, or we miss citations, or people just don't like our writing style. There's a variety of reasons, so that's fine. But yeah, that was sort of a weird one. Is like if you were taking a class at the university, and like you get straight A's on all the assignments and all the tests, and then for your final grade you get an F. And you're kind of like, the math is not mathing, guys. Like, what are we doing? Anyway, look at this. Yeah. Plagiarism is an incredibly serious allegation. Taking credit for someone else's work, this can invalidate your PhD research grants, credentials. Yeah. I mean, this is, you do this. This could destroy somebody's career, especially if they're doing publications and things. This is hugely important. I mean, it's paramount that you don't ever do anything even remotely possible to be considered as plagiarism unless you really don't care about your career as a scientist. And that's the part that's maybe the strangest is Hinton and Hopfield. I think these guys deeply care about their careers in machine learning. So them plagiarizing stuff, I mean, the community of ML researchers, we will absolutely ostracize people if they cheat. I mean, 100%. I've seen this numerous times. When people get found out that they like did something disingenuous or really questionable, those folks get their card pulled and you're gone. I mean, we did it actually. Well, I think it was actually at NeurIPS. Was that at NeurIPS? It was at NeurIPS last year when I was reviewing papers. 2 of the 5 papers that I read looked like they were AI generated. There were some really clear signals that they were AI generated. And so I raised it with the chair and said, I think that these papers are written by an AI system, and I think that that is completely unacceptable. It's against the rules. We know that. And it's also very frustrating because I'm reviewing like 10 papers and I'm trying to do my service as a good scientist. And yet I'm sitting reading 2 papers that were written by an AI from some clowns that thought that it would be fun to have the AI do the work for them. And so what I asked is that the committee review this to determine if they are AI written, and if they are, that these folks be banned from submitting research papers at NeurIPS for some period of time. And they did. They looked at it, the committee looked at it, they all agreed, and those folks are banned. And I don't think they're banned for life. Maybe they are. But I think they got banned from more than just NeurIPS. I think they got banned from all the top ML conferences because this is not cool, right? This is similar-ish to plagiarism, I think. It's like you're not writing it. The AI is. And it was just on top of that. What was so crazy is it didn't even make sense. That was how I could kind of tell is the words made sense and the grammar was grammaring, so to speak. But the ideas, like, it was nonsensical. It was like, yeah, 2 plus 2 is 5, and because of that, we can do this and this. And I'm like, I don't think it is. I mean, last I checked, it wasn't. And so if you were really paying attention, you would see that like the math was not mathing and the equations were not equationing. And that's what really tipped me off is like the writing was a bit strange, but I could, foreign, non-English first language speakers, it's very common actually. But when the ideas weren't cohesive, like I would read a sentence and then I would deeply try to understand what is the sentence saying. And I'd be like, I actually can't tell. I have no idea what they're trying to say here. And then after seeing many sentences like that, I thought, okay, this is like actually saying nothing. So anyway, this is a really serious allegation to say that they're plagiarizing, and I don't think I would. Only matters in academia. No, it doesn't. This is not true. And let me explain why it's not true. If you get found out about you're committing plagiarism in the academic circles or the research circles, you're also going to be cooked in industry because the field's not that big. We all talk to each other. And so those of us that are in industry related labs like Intel Labs, Google Brain, Microsoft Research, IBM TJ Watson, I think Amazon Science now, like we all talk to each other. And if someone's doing this over in the academic space and then they get ostracized and try to come into industry, we'll see. And that's not going to fly. So you are cooked if you do this and it's actually valid. Maybe unless you move to another country or something, or you just decide to do something entirely different. That might be a way out. But I think that this is kind of a wacky comment in my mind. I'm not trying to be mean, Rickster, but in academia, people will pillage each other's work as well. I've seen that. It's not just in the corporate world, but yes, it may happen in the corporate world. But a lot of that is like the circles that you're running in. What is this? No principal engineer? Oh, no, PE is writing. The PE, I think, is the. I think. Oh, maybe he does mean principal engineer. Sorry, I thought for a second he was confusing PE with PI. So for the grants that you have for research, you'll have a PI, and that's the principal investigator. And so anyway, so what does it say? No PE is writing anything for novel research. They take a state test after completing prerequisite work requirements. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. What is the credibility of these claims? Yeah. This is the heart of the question. And by the way, this is part of the reason why I want to talk about this, in that I think it's very easy to look at this and make a lot of bad assumptions and just assume everything the person is saying is factual, which is, I think, a really important thing not to do, especially when someone is super vehement, because I think it's even easier to just be strung along rather than asking this question. Like, okay, so you've made some strong allegations. Now, what's the actual credibility of the claims? Like, really? Okay, so this guy's saying seems credible to the extent that Hopfield networks are basically the exact same thing as networks Amari introduced many years earlier. Independent discovery is likely, but the issue Shermid-Huber brings up is that Amari is still not cited in more recent work published after people are aware. Yeah, that's the key thing, is that if they are aware of his work, I mean, it's like it, if you are referencing some powerful advancement in your research paper, it's generally really good etiquette to include citation. What is the claim? It's my brain's not working, but something like no inclusion without substantiation. Something like that. And the substantiation is the citation. I think. I'm probably mixing my metaphors, but you should generally try to do this. But again, there's so much stuff. It's people miss things, right? Let's just also try to be intellectually honest that not every time somebody misses a citation, they're a bad actor, right? I've missed stuff constantly. And then the reviewers would say, hey, you missed this. This is paper. And then I'd be like, whoa, I didn't know about that paper. Thank you so much. And my bad. We've added it now. So anyway, I think I'm going to stop now and let all of you continue on this rabbit hole if you're curious about it. But yeah, I wanted to share this. I think this is actually very interesting. I hope it all turns out well, and some of our heroes in machine learning aren't ostracized and found out to be doing really not super great things. But, it's that whole thing about, be careful of meeting your heroes, that sometimes loving people from a distance is the best way to do things. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I actually, again, I have not spent enough time on this to actually understand what's right, what's wrong here. I personally have been a fan of both of these gentlemen's work for a very long time, especially Hopfield, and it would kind of bum me out a little bit if some of the stuff was intentionally overlooked so they could appear more in the spotlight, I guess. But I don't know that yet. And so I'm not making that claim. That it could very well be that that is not the case. And so until I see definitive evidence of that, I'm very much following the way we do things in the United States, which is innocent until proven guilty. So these guys are innocent in my mind until there is no shred of doubt that what they did is wrong. So feel free to share your comments and your feedback below. I'd love to hear, especially if somebody is more looped in on this than I am and they actually know all the stuff. I'd love to see some links about how this maybe unfolded, or pieces of the story that maybe are not deeply covered by Jürgen in this tweet. Okay. That's it. Stay awesome.